Hello and welcome to this short accreditation session brought to you by Sherwood Chemicals regarding the latest innovation in formulation chemistry, FipForce, high performance, Termiticide and Insecticide. Today we'll discuss a number of slides. What is FipForce HP, Termiticide and Insecticide? How is FipForce HP different to other fipronil products? The scientific data to support FipForce HP label changes, the label, setting the industry standards for quality, and the technical and sales support. What is FipForce HP, Termiticide and Insecticide? FipForce Aqua has been rebranded as FipForce HP or High Performance. We wanted to rebrand FipForce Aqua into FipForce HP to highlight the label differences going forward. FipForce HP, Termiticide and Insecticide contains 100 grams per litre of fipronil or 0.6% active ingredient. The active comes from an APVMA approved source. It's a water-based suspension concentrate which has benefits over EC formulations, meaning it's easier to handle and safer to apply. It's also a non-repellent active ingredient, which is highly effective against social insects, and it's a slow-acting molecule. And what that means is it has more time to cascade down and towards the colony, giving you colony control. Who invented fipronil? Well, fipronil was discovered and developed by Rowan Poulenc between 1985 and 1987 and placed on the market in 1993. In 2003, BASF bought the rights to fipronil from Bayer for Japan, USA, Australia, and South Africa. They then rebranded it and called it Termitor. How does it work? Fipronil is a broad-spectrum insecticide that disrupts the insect's central nervous system by blocking the GABA-gated chloride channels and glutamate-gated chloride channels, resulting in central nervous system toxicity. It can be ingested or absorbed by termites or other insects. Where is FipForce HP produced? Sherwood Chemicals factory produces all Sherwood Chemical products. On this slide, you can see what the active ingredient, fipronil, looks like in its physical form. This is why we call FipForce Aqua or FipForce HP a suspension concentrate. We are taking physical particles and suspending them in a water-based solution. The shelf life should be 2 years under normal storage conditions. However, with FipForce HP, we expect 3 to 5 years. The schedule is an S5, caution, produced by the TGA. What is a Schedule 5? Poison. It's a substance with a low potential to cause harm, the extent of which can be reduced through the use of appropriate packaging with simple warnings and safety directions on the label. I want to highlight that you should download the SDS from our website and carry it at all times. Adhere to the storage and application notifications. So over this presentation, we'll look at what is fipronil and what is FipForce HP. But it's also important that you know where your fipronil or FipForce HP is coming from. Sherwood Chemicals is a unique formulator. It's the only one in Australasia that researches, develops, and formulates all products under ISO 9001, which is quality, ISO 14001, which is environmental, HACCP for all its cleaning products, and GMP, which is Good Management Practice certification, for all significant off-patent products supplied to the professional pest industry. In this photo, you can see that's the front of our factory, which is based in Bangkok, Thailand. It used to be the old Royal Dutch Shell formulation factory, and we'll speak about that more in the next slide. In 1975, Shell Thailand introduced Aldrin 20 and 40 EC for termiticide application in Thailand. In the 80s, Shell and FMC co-invented alpha-cypermethrin, which was one of the first SC formulations. In 1990, Shell planned to cease Aldrin production in 92, and then in 93, Shell Thailand launched alpha-cypermethrin 4SC for termiticides in Thailand. In 1996, Shell transferred its household chemical business to Sherwood Chemicals, which is what you know today. Shell Thailand was one of the first companies to introduce SC formulations as a termiticide in the world. So we're very proud of our long history, and we understand what it takes to create a stable quality SC formulation like you will be buying with FipForce HP. What makes a good SC formulation? The formulator's goals are to maximize the suspension uniformity and stability, minimize the viscosity, optimize the fluidity, and optimize the dilutability. Meaning, when you come to open a bottle, you want to be able to pour it out easily. You want it to bloom in the water content of your tank, and you want it to mix easily. In these two pictures, you'll see 100%, you'll see another one with a big X, meaning 20% at the top, 80% at the bottom. A good formulation will disperse 100% through the tank. A bad formulation will start off at 100, but over a short period of time will fall out of suspension, leaving maybe 20% of solution at the top, 80% at the bottom. Therefore, when you spray it out and do a chemical treatment, you get different concentrations. The suspended particles need to be uniformly dispersed throughout the liquid to ensure that the correct dose is delivered when a prescribed amount of concentrate is added to the water on a target formulation. FipForce HP does this. On this slide, we'll go through the different stages that the FipForce HP goes through when being mixed. The suspension concentrate is a stable suspension of solid pesticides in a fluid, usually intended for dilution with water before use. Ideally, the suspension should be stable, meaning if it's not stable, what you'll find is you get an oily slick on top of your bottle. What's happening is the solid particles or ingredients are falling out of suspension and settling at the bottom. You may choose to mix this up at this point. However, these solid particles join and clump together and cannot be separated. Therefore, a good solution should not separate. Once you take your neat formulation and you mix out your label rate, you put it into water, the fipronil blooms. When it blooms correctly and well, you know you've got a good formulation, and that's these solid particles suddenly breaking up in the water. After that, it sits in the water and should not settle out. Our previous slide showed you what a bad formulation was, where you have 20% of the formulation on top and the other 80% settles out. This 80% settling out clogs up your filters and things like that. So generally, a lot of you guys will have agitators in your tanks, which helps, but a good formulation shouldn't even need an agitator. It should sit there with enough time for you to get it empty out the tanks. So what's new with FipForce HP and how is it different to other fipronil products? This update saves you time and money. Think about all the existing homes treated with bifenthrin and imidacloprid over the years. A lot of bifenthrin and imidacloprid hole spacings are 300 millimeters wide. That's why FipForce HP is now a market leader when it comes to hole spacings, saving you time, money, wear and tear on your body and your equipment. So termite control changes. The new hole spacings for drill and inject Injection volumes for soil types are as follows. Sand equals 300 millimeters and 3 liters per injection point. Loam, 250 millimeters, 2.5 liters per injection point. Clay, loam, 200 millimeters and 2 liters per injection point. This is the standard 200 millimeters, is the general standard for Termitor, FipForce Aqua, and all the other generic products that are in the Australian market. FipForce HP now goes that one step ahead. So we've invested our money back into the product to give you guys more bang for your buck as such. So what we're doing now is increasing our hole spacings by 50%. And it's really important that you understand that, is that now you'll only have to drill 33% less holes than you used to. So you get a 33% saving on your time and equipment use. Other general pest changes, extensions to the label: millipedes, spiders, cockroaches, pill bugs, house crickets, earwigs, and house flies for external use only. On these next few slides, we'll talk about some scientific trial data. FipForce HP high performance. We invested in increasing the hole spacings for FipForce to the same spacings as both Biforce and Imiforce, or bifenthrin and imidacloprid, up to 300 millimeters. This was made possible thanks to the inclusion of advanced polymeric surfactant technology used in FipForce. On this diagram here, you'll see that FipForce Aqua Termiticide had hole spacings of 150 millimeters and 200 millimeters. Not only FipForce, but Termitor and all the other generic products that are on the Australian market as of the past only used 150 and 200 millimeter hole spacings. Biforce and Imiforce, or bifenthrins or imidacloprids, all had label extensions of 150, 200, 250, and 300, and so on and so on and so on. What this means is that when you came to do a fipronil retreat, you would have to re-drill the plugs plus add in an extra hole in between if it was an older bifenthrin or imidacloprid protection zone. Now with new FipForce HP, you don't have to do that. You can drill and inject the existing holes, saving you time and money. As I mentioned before, the drill savings from the old FipForce Aqua to the FipForce HP is now a 33% saving in time and wear and tear. FipForce HP, Biforce, and Imiforce formulations have been developed by Sherwood Chemicals as advanced suspension concentrate formulations and include polymeric surfactant technology, dispersants, wetting agents. These ingredients are the key properties, after the active ingredient obviously, which can influence the active ingredient's dispersion and absorption properties in the soil, giving us the results we wanted. Working through the process to prove that FipForce HP can be used at 300 millimeter and 250 millimeter hole spacings. The data generated from the trial support that FipForce Aqua can deliver a consistent dispersion to form a continuous treatment zone similar to Biforce or bifenthrin and Imiforce or imidacloprid when injected at a rate of 3 liters per hole into sandy soils at 300 millimeters hole spacings. The KOC formulation indicates that bifenthrin bonds rate of 31,000 and imidacloprid at 930, while fipronil has a bond rate of 1,248. This indicates that fipronil will move in the soil more than bifenthrin. We can conclude that FipForce HP will be effective at the same drill and inject label rates as Biforce or bifenthrin. What makes this possible is the use of advanced suspension concentrate formulations using polymeric surfactant technology. It's very important you understand that the polymeric surfactant technology creates the dispersion. These ingredients are the key properties which can influence the active ingredient's dispersion and absorption properties in soil. Further trial data working through the process to prove that FipForce HP can be used at 300 mm hole spacings. A field trial was completed by Sherwood Chemicals in Western Australia to compare the horizontal dispersion characteristics between fipronil and bifenthrin via soil rotting application to sandy soil in accordance with the product label FipForce 200, Termiticide and Insecticide. Holes were drilled through the concrete paver spacings at 300 mm apart as per the Biforce product label. 3 litres of solution was injected per hole to a depth of 100 mm as per the Biforce 200 label for the application of a horizontal chemical soil barrier in sand using a soil rotting injection method. A total of 9 injections were made over 3 linear meters for each product. 3 replications were completed for each product formulation. More trial data working through the process to prove that FipForce HP can be used at 300 mm hole spacings. A total of 6 samples were analysed for each product. 3 samples, 50 mm adjacent to the injection point of each replication, and 3 samples at the midpoint, 150 mm from each injection point, which would give you your 300 mm hole spacings. What we came up with, the trial data tells us that for the fipronil at 150 mm, here's your 3 replications and the 50 mm hole spacings. For fipronil at 150 mm, it averaged 2.64 milligrams per kg. When we compared it to the bifenthrin injections, it worked out at 2.59 milligrams per kg. So the fipronil spread a little better at 150. At 50 millimeters, meaning closest to the drill holes, the fipronil was 48.77 milligrams per kg, and at bifenthrin, label rate at 50 millimeters, meaning closest to the holes, was 50.06 milligrams per kg. So we can conclude that FipForce HP spreads in the soil as well as bifenthrin and imidacloprid at 300 millimeters. So in conclusion, working through the scientific trial data and working through the process to prove that FipForce HP can be used at 300 mm hole spacings. The study compared the horizontal soil dispersion characteristics of FipForce Aqua to the approved products Biforce 200, Termiticide and Insecticide bifenthrin via a drill and inject process. Each product was mixed according to the label directions and 3 litres of solution was injected into at 300 mm hole spacings into sandy soil, equivalent to the industry standards for bifenthrin and imidacloprid. After 24 hours, the concrete pavers were lifted and the sand was sampled and analysed separately for fipronil and bifenthrin. Both chemicals showed similar horizontal dispersion characteristics for each active ingredient in sandy soils. This agrees with the accepted McKell classifications of soil absorption where fipronil, bifenthrin and imidacloprid have similar classifications of low to immobile. This demonstrates that should FipForce HP be injected into sandy soils at 300mm hole spacings at 3 liters of solution per hole, that it will deliver a consistent dispersion of fipronil to form a continuous treatment zone. The next few slides will run through a couple of key points based on the new product label. Many of you will be used to the FipForce Aqua label. However, this is what this accreditation is about, being an upgrade to the FipForce product, now calling it FipForce HP or FipForce High Performance. So the active constituent is still 100 grams per litre, and the label is for the protection of structures from subterranean termite damage and for the control of subterranean termite ants, domestic cockroaches, earwigs, houseflies, web spinning spiders, daddy long-legged spiders, millipedes, pillbugs, and house crickets around domestic and commercial structures as specified in the directions for use. It's also important only to be used by appropriately licensed, qualified, and experienced professional pest managers or technicians. Hence why you are doing this accreditation. For FipForce HP, subterranean termites protection, including pre-construction and post-construction, the mixed rate is still 600 milliliters in 100 liters of water. The other interesting point that we've added to the labels are critical comments, and the critical comments come from the AAPMA Industry Code of Best Practice for Termite Management 2017. So when you refer to the label, this is obviously highly important, but another important factor is to always do your job at a best practice level. And where you can get details for this is by the appropriate training, experience, and qualifications for the professional pest management operator. See section, it's 7.1, AAPMA Industry Code of Best Practice for Termite Management 2017. And maybe go onto the AAPMA website if you want to download that document. So things that will come up with will be like, where soil is to be treated lies underneath concrete. Pest managers should explain the limitations imposed by either injection or failing to treat at all, and recommend cutting out the concrete and digging and backfilling the trenches with treated soil, as per section 15.4 of AAPMA Code of Industry Best Practice for Termite Management 2017. Now, obviously, the homeowner may not want you to cut out the concrete, so you may just do a drill and inject, but it's all about informing the customer what you will do to their home to protect it. And in doing so, this protects you in case there's any failures or any problems later down the line. So it's all about offering the gold service and then working back from that, because it's all based on what the customer's level of risk is. On this slide, we just wanted to highlight that FipForce HP is also registered on the label for Reticulation Systems, all certified reticulation systems. And once again, the mix rate is 600 milliliters in 100 liters of water. Once again, on the label, you will find the AAPMA Industry Code of Best Practice for Termite Management. And in this case, it says, use a minimum delivery volume of 100 liters of emulsion per cubic meter of appropriate soil, evenly compacted sandy loam soils. FipForce HP is also registered to protect poles and fence posts. Once again, mix the rate at 600 milliliters in 100 liters of water. It is important to note, due to the industry code of practice, that it is impossible to treat the soil at the bottom of the post or the pole. so future attacks via this route cannot be ruled out. So make sure you highlight that to your customer. FipForce HP is also registered to treat nests in poles and trees, as well as wall cavity treatments. When treating in a wall cavity, use 6 milliliters in 1 liter of water, mix it up as a foam, and apply it accordingly to the nest directly. It's also important to know that once that stage 1 has been completed and been successful, accordingly, a continuous chemical treatment should be applied to the soil around the structure according to the Code of Best Practice. FipForce HP is also highly effective on ants. And it's important that you do not mix more than the label rate of 6 mils per 1 liter of water, or else it almost becomes repellent, meaning it kills the insect too fast before the cascade effect can get back to the colony. So for nuisance ants, apply the rate at 1 liter of prepared suspension per 25 linear meters. So 300 millimeters up and 3 millimeters out where the wall and the floor surface meets. Remember that treating for ants is only external with FipForce HP. It is not an internal product. Pay attention to weak holes, cracks and crevices. For nesting ants, you want to apply a liter of prepared suspension per 16 square meters. For other general pests like domestic cockroaches, web spinning spiders, daddy longlegs, houseflies, etc., use the same label rate of a liter of mixed solution per 16 square meters. It is important that you go through your label in more detail. However, it's important to note that for FipForce HP, it will control earwigs, daddy longlegs, spiders, millipedes, pillbugs, and house crickets by direct contact. And FipForce will give up to a month's control for houseflies on external surfaces. The reason why it's a month and say 3 months, it might seem like short periods, but due to weather conditions like sunlight and rain, chemicals degrade. Therefore, this is something we suggest is probably the safe bet for you rather than offering 12 months. And also, you should only apply FipForce as a residual no more than say 2 times a year. Another point to note is do not spray it on flowers or areas where bees may land. For termite control and termite treatments, it's important that you follow the best practices. So building owners should be, they minimize the water entering around the house, good ventilation in subfloors, etc. Regular inspections should be carried out, at least annual inspections. So these are all things that you need to educate your homeowner about when using FipForce HP or doing any integrated treatment. For vertical treatment zones are designed to deter termites from gaining concealed horizontal access to a building or a structure. Apply at least 100 liters of prepared spray per cubic meter of soil. Vertically treated zones should be a minimum of 150 millimeters wide and applied at a depth of 50 millimeters below the top of the footing. Now 50 millimeters below the top of the footing is due to the best practice. Why do we do that? We do it to clean out the footing. It might be roots or some sort of other structure that can create an entry zone. When the horizontal treatment zone is installed, the vertical treated zone should be installed continuous with it. The most effective method of creating or even and continuous treated zones is by trenching and treating the soil as it's backfilled. Soil injection equipment or rodding must only be used where trenching and treating the backfill is not possible or practical, meaning the customer does not want the concrete cut. So you would drill and inject at the new label rates. For trenching, excavating a trench, treating the exposed trench, backfilling and treating the backfill is the perfect method of installing a vertical treated zone. The trench needs to be a minimum of 150 millimeters wide and continue to at least 50 millimeters below the top of the footing. So no, you should dig below the top of the footing to ensure that there are no leads, as termite leads are watertight. So it's important to break those leads. Assuming a 150 millimeter wide trench with a 300 millimeter distance to the top of the footing, this should equate to 150 millimeters multiplied by 350 millimeter trench, in which 5.25 liters of prepared spray should be applied per lineal meter of the trench. Any variations to the dimensions needs to be recalculated. Rodding through concrete, or drill and inject, is one of the major changes to the new FipForce HP label. Application of chemical treated zones beneath concrete slabs and paths will require drilling and injecting of termiticides using rodding equipment. Where soil is to be treated lies underneath concrete, pest managers should explain the limitations imposed by either injection or failure to treat at all, and recommend cutting out the concrete and digging and backfilling trenches with treated soil, as per the AEPMA Code of Industry's best practice. When applying a vertical treated zone underneath a concrete obstruction, like a path, a soil rod with a 3 or 4-way multi-directional tip should be used. The rod should be rotated during applications, 90 degrees for a 4-way tip and 120 degrees for a 3-way tip. The tip should be inserted down as close to the footing as possible to ensure a completely vertical treated zone. Ensure that the chemical is applied during insertion and withdrawal of the rod, as uneven distribution of termiticide is likely when applying by this method using concrete underneath the concrete. The application volume should be increased by 200 liters of spray solution per cubic meters of soil. Within the label, you'll be able to find this easy to use chart, which gives us the soil type, the hole spacings, and the volumes per hole. As you can see, we have 150 millimeters for heavy clays, clay loams at 200 millimeters, loams at 250 millimeters, and sand at 300 millimeters. Be sure to refer to this chart. Always follow the Australian standards. Refer to AEPMA Industry Code of Best Practice for Termite Management, and also be aware that the period of protection for FipForce HP is 8 years. The actual protection period will also be affected by factors such as termite pressures, climatic and soil conditions, and subsequent soil disturbances. Thus, it's important to have an annual inspection. At Sherwood Chemicals, we pride ourselves on quality control and delivering the best product to the Australian market. When you buy a FipForce HP bottle, there will be a serial number and a date of manufacturer stamped on the bottle. You can contact us to gain a certificate of analysis, which will prove to your customer what you are putting in the ground is of the highest quality. When we read about the fipronil active ingredient, the specification when it leaves our factory is to be between 100 and 110 grams per litre of fipronil. This result showed that it was at 102 grams per litre. The Australian standard is between 90 and 100 grams per litre, so we know from our results that we are above the standard. When it comes to particle size is also extremely important. Particle sizes at 50% are less than 2.5 micron. In this case, it was 1.85%. In particle sizes 90% and above, we're at 7.5 micron. At this, it was 3.68 micron. We have some of the smallest particle sizes, meaning you won't get filter blockages, and the suspension stays in suspension longer. Also, something else to note is that our batch sizes are extremely small, 2,600 litres for this batch, meaning we need to have smaller batches so that we can control the quality. Marketing support. With FipForce HP, we not only provide homeowner brochures in a hard copy and a soft copy. If you're accredited, we can have copies printed up with your own branding on the back. We not only have the Sherwood Chemicals website, we also have the FipForce website, which will have your accredited details linked to it. We also provide YouTube FipForce accredited videos. This is something that you may be interested in, where we film you doing your daily work, and we put the FipForce brand together, which shows you can use in your quotes to show other potential customers what kind of quality work you do. We also advertise in professional pest magazines. We run a Sherwood Chemicals conference once a year where we open our factory up, which has seen many Australian pest managers over the last few years. We also do industry conferences where we promote FipForce HP, and we also run business support. Congratulations, you've made it to the final slide. So FipForce Aqua is more than just savings, and why we believe you should use Sherwood Chemicals. Because when you buy our products, you're not just buying the product, you're also buying the backup and support. It's a quality formulation, which means no blocked filters, good tank suspension and consistent results. There's all the sales support that go with it, like brochures, YouTube clips, our strong internet presence. We have over 4,000 followers on Facebook. Technical support, problem solving with Elton O'Dern, John Ralph and Neil Younger, our chemists and our entomologists back at our factory. Business advice and application advice through Neil Younger. Our profits go back into research and development, supporting your future through innovation. This is how we got to the next level with FipForce HP. It's also important that you go back to the website at sherwoodchemicals.com.au or fipforce.com.au and download the SDS. Always follow the SDS and the label. Once you're finished with this short presentation, please click back to the FipForce accredited tab. At the bottom of this presentation, there is a question and answer sheet which you need to fill in. Please fill this in and press the submit button. This will then come back through to us and we'll be in touch with you. Once you are accredited, we suggest that you place the label and the SDS on your website, as well as the FipForce HP accredited logo. Once this is completed, you'll be uploaded onto our FipForce accredited user list. Thanks for your time, and once again, if you have any questions, please get in contact with us directly.